So, Mike, it's lovely to see you.
So let's get into Mary and Martha, which is Luke 10, 38 to 42, our gospel passage for this coming Sunday. What do you make of it?
So there are a couple of things. I mean, first of all, it's like all these familiar stories. Because we had the Good Samaritan last week, we sort of lose sight of the things that actually are quite startling. So the first startling thing is that Martha runs the household. I mean, it would be unheard of in Jesus' Judaism for a woman to be running the household. And so whatever we make of this, and it may be that it's cast in a particular way this story is just in John's Gospel, it's cast in a particular way because John's writing out of a Greek milieu, and that would be more familiar to have women running households, as we see as Paul goes around and is welcomed, for instance, by Lydia.
Yeah.
But in Jesus' Judaism, this would be really quite startling, and so that's the first thing that it's just worth not losing sight of. And of course, we get no mention of Lazarus in this one. It's just
where's their brother Lazarus? Yeah.
So, but then what I found myself landing on was the word that gets translated as busy or distracted by many things. So Martha's disposition, and apparently it's a very unusual Greek word, and it means being pulled in lots of different directions. And the implication is that it's not just, which is where I think distracted is quite a helpful translation, it's not just pulled in different directions because you've got so many tasks to do, but you are sort of interiorly pulled in different directions. So you are approaching this task in this distracted, multiply pulled way, and that's a disposition of busyness, which means that whatever you approach, you make it busy, and engage with it in a distracted, flustered, I've got to do this, I've got to do that kind of thing. And I just have a sense that what Jesus is challenging in Martha, because we always get upset that he picks on Martha, and Martha's the one who's doing all the work. I just get a sense that what Jesus is challenging in her is not that she was appropriately providing some hospitality for her guest, which you would expect, but that she was doing it in a way that was kind of making a mountain out of a molehill, was it was overwhelming her. She made it all that she was about, and therefore was not even able to acknowledge the importance of what Mary was doing. The interesting thing that struck me of Mary is that she's sitting, and again, you wouldn't expect a woman to sit at the feet of the rabbi. So that's again startling. But I immediately, because this is I just said John, didn't I? I meant Luke. This is Luke's gospel, and Luke has got that story of Jesus, age 12, sitting at the disciples' feet, at the teacher's feet in the. I'm the one who needs a holiday. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning. All right, that's my excuse. So sitting at the teacher's feet in the temple, and that sense of sitting at someone's feet to learn and to learn about God is what, and I think there's a connection there in the way in which Luke tells this. And so you've got that activity, and then Martha's very distracted. No, you could be distracted sitting at the feet of someone trying to learn. You could adopt that same sort of all over the place, looking out the window, thinking about something else, doing this and doing that. And what Mary is exemplifying is being focused. So I'm sort of trying to rescue. I don't think it's forcing the text either to rescue the sense that actually what Martha's doing is important. It's the way she's doing it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as you know, in our diocese, we talk about, you know, what we've learned through the pandemic is the two most important things are worship and service, and that's what you've got in Martha and Mary, or Mary and Martha, and but both of those need to be engaged with that sort of focused attentiveness that is not being pulled in all sorts of different directions.
Yeah. So just to piggyback on that then, I mean, there's lots coming out of that. So I'm thinking of Mary Oliver, you know, the poet. She talks about the giving of attention is the beginning of worship. The giving of attention is the beginning of worship. And if that's true, we should be pretty careful about both what we're giving attention to and the quality of our attentiveness. And as you say, one of the big dangers with our spiritual and Christian walk is distraction. And Dallas Willard, who you've heard me quote many occasions, reckons that distraction is the biggest issue for us as Christians. The Methodists have this saying, we're so focused on the ABC, we forget the D. Yeah, we're so focused on attendance, buildings and cash that we forget about the D of discipleship. And that's what we need to be really focused upon. And I was also thinking of, as you were speaking, Ignatius of Loyola. He once tore off a Spanish Jesuit, Nadal, because this Spanish Jesuit had allowed his fellow Jesuits to have 1.5 hours of contemplative prayer every day, in addition to kind of like the examen and this, that and the other. And Ignatius went, "What are you doing? 15 minutes max. Otherwise they can be about their business." Now that might sound like it's the opposite of what you're saying, but for Ignatius, what was key was the examen, because that was where you had the feedback loop with your values, and that was where you came back to our Lord and what was at the centre. That was critical. But once you'd got that focus, you were released. You didn't have to spend another 1.5 hours in contemplative prayer, but the basis was the focus was the basis. Or Brother Lawrence, you see that again in Brother Lawrence. What are the 5 elements for Brother Lawrence? You know, guard the door of your heart, so you've got to be really attentive. Yeah. Treasure the presence of God more than anything else. Offer arrow prayers to God. Do all for the love of God, and keep the face of Christ before you. Now, that's a kind of a focus for the pots and pans of daily life. It means you can do the domestic round, but because you've got that focus, it's all about remembrance in a way, isn't it? But what Bart said about the church, he said, you know, basically the church is our common attempt to remember God.
And I suppose, I mean, I'm just thinking very practically. I'm struck as I'm as guilty of this myself, but struck by listening to clergy saying that, you know, we don't have much time to pray because this happens and that happens and the other happens, and I know, you know, I fall into that. I think we all fall into that. But what we're being called to is to have that focused attention when we worship and pray, and that focused attention when we serve.
Yeah.
And when we think about, you know, what is it that actually really nourishes us, it is those moments, or renews us in order that we can continue in our ministries. It is those moments where we are focused and attentive.
Yeah.
So I think, there was a lot more in this story that we were very familiar with than I had previously thought.
Yeah, indeed. And again, as you speak, last word, Meister Eckhart, what does he say holiness is? Holiness is giving undivided and absolute attention to the very next thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Amen.